Sego wat kono horado Kahnawà ono onigini ne ganana se Michael Rice yung gana dukwa na ne Kahnawà ni duageno. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Kahnawà. My name is Michael Gananese Rice, and what you were looking at, this was the first Canadian regiment that was stationed on the Oshadigi Road, maybe about 500 meters west of the late Joe Onwarahto Deer and Josie Deer's house. They had come and they had set up, and you could see from the leaves on top changing colors. This was early September, and these were the checkpoints that Kahnawà Ono had to pass through every day, entering the community from different roads. This picture was taken at the junction at the 207, where you get off the 138 off ramp. This was another station that we had to walk through. The reason I got these pictures, I used to walk there every day going to Dawson and taking pictures of the overpass. And I don't know why in my head I had bought a camera at McCumber's Camera, and I says, you know what, I better take these pictures one day so that people will remember what happened. So even if we're gone or if we ever lose our memories, the young people can say, what was it like? Well, here's the pictures. You can see further down, there's another APC, which is right in front of, I believe at the time, that was Peter Diome's farmhouse. So they basically had checkpoints all over the community coming in, so we had to go through them every day. This was again here early September, the same location near. This would now be the road going to Mike Dybo's and Jesse Morris's. They had everything. They had Cougars. They had the old APCs. They were stationed on the road, and you can see the Johnny on the spot. As time went on, the soldiers got more comfortable with us taking pictures. This was another crew that was set up, First Canadian Regiment. They were set up. That's going for the train bridge. You can see there's a lot of vehicles they had there. For some reason, they were scared that we would try to take the train bridge. And when I went over to take the pictures, I was able to get the photos, and then after that, maybe a few minutes later, I had a whole bunch of army soldiers coming down, asking what I was doing, and I says, I'm just taking shots. That's up near, that's Gordon Day. You can see here in the right hand part of the picture. He just came back from telling off the soldiers there who were doing the checkpoints. They would put barbed wire across the road. You could see Gordon had no fear. He gave them a piece of their mind, and pretty sure those soldiers weren't too happy. Two of them encountered Gordon. That's now where the Kahnawà sports field is, near the sports complex. It's been reconfigured, and you can see the dirt piles from when the community members had set up the blockades to stop. And they had military patrols up and down the 138 going to Chateauguay. This was taken. Those pictures were taken late August when I came back on weekends from living in the city, because we got stuck living in the city going to Dawson. So every time I came home, I brought my camera with me, and I kept snapping pictures. That was one of the best investments I ever did, by getting a 35 millimeter Minolta from Susie McCumber. There also was a military supply truck resupplying the guys at the checkpoint. From where I was standing, there was a Kahnawà checkpoint, and then there was a military checkpoint here. Basically, checking who was coming into the community, who was going out. I used to find it annoying. There is a peacekeeper, Craig Standup, from behind. He would also be there. The peacekeepers were quite vigilant in those years to make sure that community members were not being abused or harassed in any way. Because as students, we used to walk back from the overpass going to Dawson, and I remember the soldiers just going through our bags the first few weeks, and I used to say, "What do you expect us to carry? We got school books and whatever." But that was strange. That's another angle on the shot. This was again in September. That's another close-up shot of their Cougars. So by this time, the soldiers got more comfortable with us taking photos, that they didn't even bother looking at us or peeking out of their cockpits. There was the soldiers that were up on the bridge. You can see the guy, if you look really closely at the picture. They were up there for some reason. I guess they had nightmares of the FLQ coming back and sabotaging the train bridge. But everybody was like, why would we bother the train bridge? But I don't know. I guess that was the fear they had, and they always had at least two squads of men at all times, and they had men up on the lift bridge, which for me would probably be a very boring posting to be stuck up there. And they had a first aid truck there, supply trucks, communication trucks, APCs. There's the guys in the APCs. I think at this point they were kind of annoyed, saying, "Here's that jerk again with his camera. I wish he'd go home." The other guy there took a picture. The guy you see there with the curly hair, that's Jerry. He's called him Bolo Montour. So there used to be different community members that would volunteer in the checkpoints to watch who was coming in and out, and then the military had their guys in the checkpoints. I think after a certain time, I think they were just bored to be there, especially the Royal Canadian Regiment, that 1st Canadian Regiment. They did not want to be here because I asked a few of them where they had come from, and they said they came from Gagetown and they had just returned from the former Yugoslavia from a peacekeeping mission. So they were supposed to have all gone on leave, and they were really pissed that they were getting shipped to Kahnawà in Kahnawà. They said, we don't want to be here. We just want to go home to our families. We've been stuck in Europe. This is another crew that's down the road later in the day. You can see from the shadow. I think after a while, the soldiers started to find it very tedious because they would just sit there all day in the sun, rain. This was a helicopter flight that passed by. This was during the raid on Kahnawà Island from September 18th. Because as soon as we heard the choppers coming in, I went running home to grab my camera. And I started shooting pictures because I was saying, where else will you see helicopters flying over an elementary school? This was at the former Kahnawà. These were soldiers that were on the island September 18th. Again, these guys were the Royal Canadian Regiment. They were basically brought to the island when Chinooks and Hueys and Iroquois helicopters. These guys, I think, if I remember correctly, these were the military police. They were not Van Du's regiment, but they were more like military police and Royal Canadian. That's the most of the majority of the soldiers. There's one of the guys in the tank just being a joker who's waving to me from the cockpit. He got tired of sticking his head out, so he was just waving. That's a picture over the St. Lawrence Seaway. They had a lot of these Kahnawà class, Iroquois class helicopters. They were reconnaissance, but from the way the propellers were, they sound a lot like Hueys. This was their combat correspondent, their photographer for the Royal Canadian Regiment. He was taking pictures of people at the island. So the guys came over, said, get a picture of him. So I took a picture of him. He wasn't too happy with me. Me and him were basically like the white spy versus black spy in Mad comic books. He was taking pictures of our guys, and everybody said, get their pictures. And not long after, they started putting on their face masks. This guy here with the red helmet was supposed to be military police, but we all suspected, including the guy with the 45 ACP and the helmet, we suspected they were undercover SQ. And he was terrified. He kept hiding in the back there. You can see he's got his SQ riot helmet and shield. He had his hand on always near his trigger. The soldiers were probably not impressed that they had undercover SQ embedded in their units. And this guy just gave me a glare, and he's wearing his glasses. So I says, I don't care. I'm taking your pictures. These were the guys as they were moving towards the Kahnawà Marina. I was on the opposite side at Hooks Point. And they were basically, they said they were looking for weapons. They never found anything on the island, and they were looking behind every tree, every shrub. I don't know what they were going to find there other than shale and maybe some garter snakes. This was another one of their Royal Canadian Regiment photographers. He had like a really old-fashioned video camera. He was filming. These were the soldiers there. They were on the island. They could see there was cars, some community members who were caught off guard. They parked on the island, and then when they realized the soldiers were coming in force, there was about 200 to 400 men. And when the community members started showing up, they threw up the barbed wire to separate themselves. And at this point, I don't even think they realized what was coming. You can see the soldiers there. They're moving out from along the. That would be where the parking is now for the Kahnawà Echoes of a Proud Nation powwow. There's one of the Chinooks that was taking off that had just dropped off the soldiers. And when you were there, the thing that always stuck with me was just that whoomp, 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 whoomp of the propeller blades. You see it in movies and you don't think much of it. When you're there and you have them flying over you, they're pretty loud. Then you start figuring out why guys used to yell at each other in war movies. So the other guys, again, they were moving up. They were kind of figuring out what I was doing because I was using a telephoto. I was using a long lens. And I remember there was guys yelling because they kept thinking I had like a sniper scope and a sniper rifle. So they kept having helicopters and stuff flying over where I was. And then eventually, in order to get these pictures out, I had to run home, go through the swamp, go through a sewage pipe, get to my house, hose off my smelly, dirty clothes, grab a set of clean clothes, and then come back down the hill to the island. And then I think I took this out to a 1 hour processing center in Alexis Neon Plaza. And the guy says, how fast do you need them? I said, what's fastest you can do? So, well, 24 hours. So if I give you more money, how fast can you do it? He says 1 hour. This was over the seaway. You can see there's a couple of APCs. The UEs were flying over the river. There's community members in a boat. So as they were coming off the conveyor belt, kind of like Krispy Kreme, these pictures were coming out. And I remember the guy saying, holy shit. He said, where were you? I says, how much I owe you? I said, just give me the pictures. I want them doubles. He's like, where did you come from? I said, just process them and I'll give you the money. And I took it and I left. So, yeah, it was strange because I said nobody was ever going to believe this. It looks like a scene from Apocalypse Now or something. And this is when they started putting on their masks before they were getting ready to throw tear gas because they asked the community members, the helicopters can't come back and get us. Will you let us march out? And everybody's like yelling and screaming at them. No, we don't trust you. Get the F out of here. So he says, oh, well, we're going to have to use tear gas on people. And that just make it everything exasperating. You can see here the soldiers, they were pulling back after the first skirmish on the bridge. There was a number of soldiers that were carried off. They were injured. Again, you can see the guy, the SQ guys, they got the MP badges on their arm, but they were undercover cops. They were terrified. They always had their hands on their firearms, and they were hiding behind trees. And they started bringing in more and more men. They brought in bigger guys. And I don't know why they're bringing grenade launchers and whatever. People weren't armed on the island other than with sticks and rocks and their bare hands. And then here you can start seeing the soldiers, the younger soldier there in the middle playing with his strap. I think he realized what was coming. There was going to be a big brawl. But the undercover policemen were in the back and they were terrified. And everybody from town wanted to get at them, wanted to beat them up, especially the older guys. These are the guys, the Royal Canadian Regiment on the Oshedigi Road, the same location. This was now getting, I would say, late September, early October. And they basically just had these slow winding checkpoints, kind of like what you go through at Canada border crossing. Here they were putting on their gas masks. And I remember telling people, you better get back or you better have your own gas mask. Because they said, unless you've been in basic training, because I had come out of the military, so I said that tear gas doesn't taste good and it burns like hell. And people were so mad. And then here, this was when the photographer and the filmographer realized that I was taking pictures of them, and the guy was like, hey, get a picture of this guy. He's taking pictures of us. And you can see they were startled. That was another Chinook. There was about maybe 10 to 12 Chinooks that brought the soldiers in, so they had to bring in them waves. And then later that night, when they had to extract all of them, there's another one here landing on the island, pulling up a lot of dust. And then by this time, there was maybe about a crowd of about 400 or 500 people on the other side of the bridge. There was a lot of people by Onage. And these helicopters, all they did was help spread the tear gas, which eventually went to the Kahnawà Hospital. And many of the patients had experienced gassing and the effects, nauseousness, vomiting, which basically enraged the community more. This guy called him the jerk from the SQ. He just kept hiding behind the trees. But he always had his hand in that position, with his hand up in the air on his gun. He was terrified. And I think here is the first wave of the soldiers realizing now that they were in for a fight. They're in shock. That the first volley of tear gas, instead of dispersing the crowd, made them more angry. And you could see the soldiers were standing there looking dumbfounded, like why people were still resisting without no weapons. These are the guys doing the sweep on the island. They went all the way up to the marina, and from what I remember, I think they seized all the beer and the liquor in the marina. With the SQ was hauled out. It was a big it was a big, I would say, a big debacle because it was all over the media. They were asking the military officers, "What did you come there for?" They said, "We're looking for weapons." They says, "Well, why did you take all the beer and alcohol?" And they says, "Well, that's not us. It's the SQ." There's one of the pilots in the helicopter. I zoomed in on him, and he realized I was taking a picture of him. So there's some more of the soldiers who were there. Many of them were young. I don't know if they had much experience at all other than peacekeeping because they they just didn't seem to clue into the energy and anger of the community. This was another one of the helicopters coming by, buzzing me, trying to find me in the swamp. Because all I could hear is they were saying, get that guy, he's got a scope, he's got a scope. They didn't realize it was just my Minolta SL 25, 35 millimeter. But it was a really nice, was a really nice telephoto because that was a long lens. It was about a foot or foot and a half. But they were freaking out. They thought I had a sniper rifle or something. They're looking down a side road. There's all kind of side roads when you come onto the island going to the powwow. And these were a lot of the police were looking all over. They were looking for stashes of weapons. I don't think they even found anything. I think maybe they found like some 22s or other small like hunting rifles and shotguns. There's another one coming in. They basically came flying in like really close, really loud, hoping that it would terrorize the community, and all it did was make people more irate. And I just kept shaking my head, saying, "Oh, these guys are incredibly dumb." Because when I looked at the pictures and I looked up, here's the guy when I caught him in between changing his rolls of film, and you can see the other guys are putting on their gloves now. They were really baffled because they were like trying to figure out why I was taking their picture. And this is one of the guys. Yeah, there he is. I caught him, the jerk. He always had this pose, and everyone you see, he's there. He really had that Inspector Clouseau judo look from the Sûreté and the old Pink Panther movies. But if there was any guy that everybody wanted to punch, it was him. I think there was like everybody from the community wanted to pound him. This was a nice close-up of the old APCs. These are all vehicles that Canada purchased from the U.S. military. These were all Vietnam-era military vehicles. And then this is where they're getting ready now to start pushing back. There's more soldiers that were on the side of the island. And you can see from the pictures, like these guys were in age anywhere from 18 to maybe 21, 22, 23. There's more helicopters landing on the island. They were dropping off more soldiers. This was flying over the bay. And the thing we kind of found strange was they were just transport helicopters. Like we were looking for M60 side mounted, and looking for rocket launchers. They had no weaponry on them. And anybody who knows anything about aeronautics in these Hueys, if you hit the rear rotor on these things crash and burn. But they were coming in. That was a picture I took. Somebody had given me a stuffed beaver, and at the time, in the political media war, I remember somebody at the nation office said, "Oh, we have to have a picture of somebody who supports us." And I says, "I got somebody." He says, "Who?" He said, "He's from the Inno Nation." And he says, "Well, what do you call him?" He says, "Oh, we call him Amik, the beaver." And they said, "Where?" So I took a little Warrior Society flag. I drilled a hole, put it in the wood log, put Mohawk Warrior Society. It looks like he's holding it like Captain America shield. And I put it in the backyard of my mother's house, on top of a hill with the house in the background. So he kind of looks like a giant beaver, like kind of like Godzilla. And the people said, "This is the funniest thing we've ever seen." So if the wind was blowing, that was a January day. It had to be about 25, 30 below, but he was perfect, that stuffed beaver. I think I gave it away to somebody. I don't remember who. So he's somewhere still flying that flag and keeping his Captain America shield with him.
Um, so that's the slideshow. If you wanted to say any last words to people that might be listening.
Well, I think but the last words for people is, uh, especially for the people that were uh, around that time. Like now, I'm 54. At that time in 1990, I was 19. I had just graduated July 13 from basic training, Canadian Armed Forces. I think it's important that for the people that were there, like 50, 54 and older, for them to go back and now in their memories and try to process it without, the emotion overcoming people. And I think for the younger people that are there, they also have to see that these pictures are uh, a part of our history, and that they should try to see it. I'm hoping that people will see the pictures without the emotions, but when you see the pictures, some of them are triggering for people. I know for many years I just didn't look at the photo albums, and then one day my son was like, "Dad, who took these pictures?" I said, "I did." He says, "How come you never told me?" I says, "Well, Ryan, like we just kind of buried the memories. Like for 30 years, you didn't want to talk about it or look at it because you just got mad." Because I found for us, like, yeah, we fought the battle, but we didn't really get the benefits. I says, look, the people in Ganassadagi still didn't get their land title settled, which it all started over. We basically got the shaft, and then the federal government went around trying to co-opt all the other reserves. Said for other Imgawon people across Canada, and it says it benefited them. They got the benefits, but it says we're going to live with that the rest of our life. The post-traumatic stress, the people went through depression, we went through anxiety, and we just didn't know what it was. We were just go, 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 go. Until one day we all just hit a wall and we realized, like, hey, we have unprocessed memories. And I think it's important that people get it out, get the help whatever way they need. If you need to cry, cry. If you need to scream, you need to yell, you need to chop wood, you need to go in the woods, do whatever it is. But I hope we never have to go through that again because I came out of the military, I was 175. And during the siege at Kahnawà, I lost 20 pounds. I was down to 155 pounds, eating one meal a day, 2, 3 hours sleep at night, constant stress. Because I know a lot of younger people and other people, they all like go around shooting a warrior flag, and they have this emblems and symbols everywhere, and they kind of wear it like it's a fashion statement. I was like, guys, it's like it wasn't a fun time at all for anybody. Elderly people, people with children, expecting women. Like we went through a lot because we weren't sure if we really were going to get attacked or get shot at or get bombed, and then we knew we were going to be in for a fight. But the guys that were there at the time, like we were basically bonded like that. We still talked to each other. We still, hey, how you doing? But in those years, we were just like ready. Like if we have to fight, we'll fight. But we're gonna fight smart. We're gonna defend the community. We're gonna hold our ground. And we're not gonna give an inch. And then I think after that, I think the governments of Quebec and Canada and other provinces step back and say, you know what, these people are really ready to fight and ready to dig in. So I think in the long term, there's going to be benefits, but I think in the long term too, there's also going to be scars for the people that were alive in that time, even the children that were born. They're going to be carrying that stress, and those trauma genes are going to be with them. So they're going to have to remember that it's going to be something they're going to have to deal with for the rest of their life. But I always tell people just process the emotion. It happened in the past. It's not happening now, but you're going to have to deal with it when it comes up. You know,